Hello, my friend. I have few clips about the just concluded hearing with Pete Hegseth. I don't have much to say, but I want to get your opinion whether I am overreacting to this or if my reaction is legitimate. Now, I'm going to play them for you. I think 3 or 4 from the Democrats and 1 from the Republican. Are the Democrats intentionally being salacious, or is their righteous indignation legitimate, or are they faking as usual? And then compare what they were saying, how they were saying them, and their lack of relevant question to Pete Hegseth with Mr. Schmidt, the Republican senator. It's just a test. Let me see what your comment side. If their action is legitimate, let me know why you say so. If you consider their way of questioning as salacious or malicious, as a matter of fact, especially Tim Kaine, who was just a few meters away from being purely X-rated. If it's also legitimate, then let me hear that in the comment side down below. I give you the first one. It should be from Tim Kaine, and this was they had back and forth, him and Pete Hegseth. It's a little bit long, so I will not play all of them so that you have time to go through and judge.
Senator Sullivan, Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Hegseth. I'm looking forward to this opportunity to talk. I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared?
Senator,
how is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges.
Well,
it was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything?
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me. Fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge, that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces from your first and second wives, were there non-disclosure agreements in connection with those divorces?
Senator, not that I'm aware of.
If there were, would you agree to release those first and second wives from any confidentiality agreement?
Senator, it's not something I'm aware of.
But if there were, you would agree to release them from a confidentiality agreement?
Senator, that's not my responsibility.
Did you ever engage in any acts of physical violence against any of your wives?
Senator, absolutely not.
But you would agree with me that if someone had committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
I don't think it's a hypothetical. Violence against spouses occurs every day. And if you as a leader are not capable of saying that physical violence against a spouse should be a disqualifying fact for being secretary of the most powerful nation in the world, you're demonstrating an astonishing lack of judgment. The incident in Monterey led to a criminal charge, a criminal investigation, a private settlement, and a cash payment to the woman who filed the complaint. And there was also a non-disclosure agreement, correct?
It was a confidential settlement agreement off of a nuisance lawsuit.
Right. During an interview, you claimed that you settled the matter because you were worried that if it became public, it might hurt your career. Do you maintain that you were blackmailed?
Senator, I maintain that false claims were made against me. And ultimately,
your attorney
those
used
false
the
claims,
phrase,
I have the opportunity to attest my innocence in those false claims.
But you didn't reveal any of this to President Trump or the transition team as they were considering you to be nominated for Secretary of Defense. You didn't reveal the action. You didn't reveal the criminal complaint. You didn't reveal the criminal investigation. You didn't reveal the settlement. You didn't reveal the cash payment. Why didn't you inform the commander-in-chief and the transition team of this very relevant event?
Senator, I've appreciated every part of the process with the transition team. They have been open and honest with me. We've had great conversations between the two of us, and I appreciate the opportunity that President-elect Trump has given me.
You chose not to reveal this, right? Because you knew it would hurt your chances. So you chose not to reveal this really important thing to the commander-in-chief and the transition team because you were worried about your chances rather than trying to be candid with the future president of the United States. Are there any other important facts that you chose not to reveal to the president-elect and his team as they were considering you to be Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I sit here before you an open book, as everyone who's watched this process.
With multiple non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements tying the hands of many people who would like to comment to us. Much has been made of your workplace behavior as a leader of nonprofit veterans organizations and as a Fox News contributor. Were you fired from either of the leadership positions with the nonprofits?
I was the leader. I was the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America and the executive director of Vets for Freedom.
Were you fired from either of them?
And I was never fired from a veterans organization.
Do you have non-disclosure agreements with either of those organizations?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Many of your work colleagues have said that you show up for work under the influence of alcohol or drunk. I know you've denied that, but you would agree with me, right, that if that was the case, that would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense.
Senator, those are all anonymous false claims, and the totality
they're not anonymous.
The letters on the record here.
They're not anonymous.
On the record,
we've seen records with names attached to them.
Vets for Freedom, Concerned Vets for America, and Fox News attributing to me working hard every day on behalf of
one of your
mission.
colleagues said that you got drunk at an event at a bar and chanted, "Kill all Muslims." Another colleague, not anonymous, we have this, said that you took co-workers to a strip club. You were drunk, you tried to dance with strippers, you had to be held off the stage, and one of your employees in that event filed a sexual harassment charge as a result of it. Now, I know you denied these things, but isn't that the kind of behavior that, if true, would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense?
Senator, anonymous false charges.
They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions,
Chairman,
attitudes,
I think he's
words,
over
and
his time.
statements
He's
to
way
women.
over his time.
So when you consider that a man like this was this step away from becoming the vice president of the United States, you realize that destiny doesn't make a mistake. See, it's a very brutally salacious and malicious man. There's no other thing I can decipher from this than he is a man with a very, very bad will. He just to smear somebody, because none of this, at the end, if he did all this and ask, how are you going to improve the veteran this, or how are you going to improve our lethalness, or how are you going to improve the non-audit or failure of multiple audits, you can say, okay, you can pardon a bit of it, but none. It's all about sex. You sleep, you drink, including one person said he drank and said, kill a Muslim. He has to put it there. And with the smog, when somebody is saying something serious with that smog, you know that it's just a talk. That is my own thought. As I said from the beginning, let me know what you think about that particular tape down below at the comment side. Now let us go to the rebuttal from Mr. Schmidt, the Republican senator. Also, you tell me whether his reaction against this salacious one from Tim Kaine is warranted or he's overblowing the contest and adding his own contest. Or was he trying to be human? If so, or if not, comment down below.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Hegseth. I'm looking forward to this opportunity to talk. I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife.
I was misinformed.
Am I?
Senator Mullen,
Okay.
you're correct.
Sorry, this
Caught
is
me
the
totally
right
off guard there. I'd like to submit for the record signatures by 32 members of the House of Representatives who are veterans. The signatures call on the Senate to honor the constitutional duty of advise and consent by conducting a fair, thorough confirmation process that evaluates his nomination solely on the substance and merits. His distinguished military service, academic credentials, and a bold vision for revitalizing the national defense. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record.
Without objection.
You know, there's a lot of talk going about talking about qualifications and then about us hiring him if we are the board. But there's a lot of senators here I wouldn't have on my board because there is no qualifications except your age, and you got to be living in the state and you're a citizen of the United States to be a senator. Other than the fact we got to convince a lot of people to vote for us. And then when we start talking about qualifications for if you're qualified for it, could the chairman tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense? Mr. Chairman, could you tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense?
I'd be happy for
I'll read
for
it.
you to do that. Yeah.
Let me read it for you because I Googled
I
it.
was getting some advice from
I
my
understand
second
that.
in command.
Yeah, but I'm just making a point because there's a lot about qualifications. And I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not going to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here. But let me read you what the qualifications of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it, and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see. But in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But you so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too. I have changed, but I'm not perfect. But I found somebody that thought I was perfect. And for whatever reason, you love Pete, and I don't know why. But just like our Lord and Savior forgave me, my wife's had to forgive me more than once too, and I'm sure you've had to forgive him too. And so thank you. So before I go down this rabbit hole again, tell me something about your wife that you love.
She's the smartest, most capable, loving, humble, honest person I've ever met. In addition to being incredibly beautiful. Don't forget about your kids. I'm supposed to talk about my kids?
No, well, she's also the mother.
Oh, an amazing mother.
Yes.
Of our blended family of 7 kids.
Brother, I'm pulling you along.
Her.
I'm trying to help you here. You know, do you believe that you're going to be running the Secretary or the Department of Defense by yourself?
Senator, absolutely not. Just as President Trump is assembling his cabinet, I look forward and already am in the process of building one of the best possible teams you can imagine with decades and decades of experience outside of the Pentagon, driving innovation and excellence, and also inside the building, knowing how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
So, in your organizations that you did have the privilege of running, did you have a board that you...
In both organizations, we had a board, yes.
Okay, and what did you do with that board? What kind of decisions did you make with them?
Those boards provided oversight and insight into decision-making.
They all have special, unique sets that maybe filled gaps that you're not the expertise in?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe you're capable of surrounding yourself with capable individuals that you're going to be able to run those same ideas by and surround yourself with people that are smarter and better equipped in maybe areas that you don't necessarily carry those expertise with?
Senator, the only reason I've had success in life, to include my wonderful wife, is because of people more capable around me and having the self-confidence to empower them and say, hey, run with the ball, run with the football, take it down the field. We'll do this together. I don't care who gets the credit. And in this case, that's how the Pentagon will be run.
Let's end with this, Mr. Chairman, about the qualifications. You got a man who has literally put his butt on the line, who served 20 years in the service, multiple deployments, has heard the bullets crack over the top of his head, has been willing to go into combat, been willing to see friends die for this country. And he's willing to still put himself through this. His wife is willing to still stand beside him, knowing he wasn't perfect, knowing that all this was going to be brought up, and he's still willing to serve the country. What other qualifications does he need? That I yield back.
Thank you, Senator.
So do you see, compare the two utterances, the one from Tim Kaine and the one from Mr. Smith. Judge for yourself, which of them do you think is in line with the advice and consent role of the Senate. Now, you might be a Democrat, you might be a Republican, Libertarian, or independent. In your own good conscience, which of these two has the country in mind? Which of these two has the concept of advice and consent? As simple as it may sound, the president was the one who had the mandate. He's the one who had the mandate. He only picked the people he wants to work for him to deliver that mandate, to deliver the dividend of that mandate to the people. He looked around in a country of 220 million people and said, this man, this man, this man, I want to use to fulfill the mandate I was given. In your own judgment, who of these two is closer to that advice and consent role? You can say other things, but try to mention these two, advice and consent, and who is closer. Now, with that being told, Schmidt is Republican, Tim Kaine is Democrat. Listen to these two also and tell me where you think they belong in the spectrum.
And I want to thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity.
Thank you, Senator.
I have many concerns about your record, and particularly your public statements, because they are so hurtful to the men and women who are currently serving in the U.S. military, harmful to morale, harmful to good order and discipline. If you are saying that women shouldn't be serving in the military, and I'm going to read you your quotes, because the quotes themselves are terrible. You will have to change how you see women to do this job well, and I don't know if you are capable of that. So I want to press on these issues that my colleague Jean Shaheen brought up, because she said it so well. So first of all, you answered your questionnaire. Do you believe that any American who wants to serve in their country in the military and can meet objective standards set by the military should be allowed to serve without limitation? You've said yes to that question. But then in all of these other circumstances, you've denigrated active duty service members. We have hundreds of women who are currently in the infantry, lethal members of our military serving in the infantry, but you degrade them. You say, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. So specific to Senator Cotton's question, because Senator Cotton was giving you layups to differentiate between different types of combat. And specifically, as Secretary, would you take any action to reinstitute the combat arms exclusion for female service members, knowing full well you have hundreds of women doing that job right now? And the standards, your 2-mile run, Tom, is about the Army Combat Fitness Test. It is not the requirements to have an MOS 11 Bravo, which is the infantry. These are the requirements today for people serving in the industry, men and women. They are gender neutral, and they are very difficult to meet. They have not been reduced in any way, and our combat units, our infantry is lethal. So please explain specifically, because you will be in charge of 3 million personnel. It is a big job. And when you make these public statements, and I get you were not Secretary of Defense then, I get you were on TV, I get you were helping veterans, I get it was a different job. But most recently, you said this in November of 2024, knowing full well you might have been named as Secretary of Defense. So please explain these types of statements, because they're brutal and they're mean and they disrespect men and women who are willing to die for this country.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your comments, and I would point out I have never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle. Standards have been changed inside infantry training units, ranger school, infantry battalions to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized
meet
statements.
quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women
Commanders
who are
do not have to
capable
be
of meeting
quotas
that
for the
standard.
infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you.
Remember, this is somebody who sits in the office and somebody who fights the war. Also, these are people who do not know what a woman is. Suddenly, they are now experts in women in combat role. I'm just saying, sorry for the interruption. Let's continue with the truth.
Having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle. So you cannot denigrate women in general, and your statements do that. We don't want women in the military, especially in combat. What a terrible statement. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed you would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women, you have denigrated. You have also denigrated members of the LGBTQ community. Did you know that when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in place, we lost so many crucial personnel, over 1,000 in mission-critical areas. We lost 10% of all our foreign language speakers because of a political policy. You said in your statement, you don't want politics in the DOD. Everything you've said in these public statements is politics. I don't want women. I don't want moms. What's wrong with a mom, by the way? Once you have babies, you therefore are no longer able to be lethal. I mean, you're basically saying women, after they have children, can't ever serve in the military in a combat role. It's a silly thing to say. It's a silly thing to say, beneath the position that you are aspiring to. To denigrate LGBTQ service members is a mistake. If you are a sharpshooter, you're as lethal regardless of what your gender identity is, regardless of who you love. So please know this to be a true statement. So you say it was a political thing. You say it undermined us, social engineering. I don't know why someone having to publicly say or not publicly say who they love is social engineering. I think having that policy in the first place was highly problematic. And as you said in your statement, do you agree anybody should be able to serve in the military if they meet the standards?
Senator, as the president has stated, I don't disagree with the overturn of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Great, because I don't want you thinking, can't serve if you're a mom, can't serve if you're LGBTQ, and then last, can't serve if you're a leftist. The statements you said about people who have views differently than you, that we're the enemy, are you saying that 50% of the DOD, if they hold liberal views or leftist views or are Democrats, are not welcome in the military? Are you saying that?
Senator, I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan under Democrat President Barack Obama. I also volunteered to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden, but was denied the opportunity to serve because I was identified as an extremist by my own unit for a Christian tattoo.
Thank you very much. Senator Gillibrand.
So, you judge for yourself. It's more of posturing. That is what I see. That's my own judgment. You are entitled to yours. You can also make it known down below at the comment section. I see posturing. I don't think she is serious with, even though she's yelling literally. I don't think she's serious with anything. They're never serious with anything. They just want to make their political point. And I don't know why LGBTQ will dominate every single discussion. Lesbian, gay, trans, queer. All of these are sexual orientation. You can say whatever you want. It is welcome in the society. It has been a normal thing for life. But it doesn't have to dominate every single discussion. It doesn't have to be the center of every single discussion. The more you make it center of every single discussion, the more you make it the subject for constant attack. Because not everyone will welcome it, whether you like it or not, and you must know that. The next thing is that they will equate it with black racism. Even black racism, and there are still people who hate black to today. So just let things be. You told us that these are bedroom stuff. Keep them in the bedroom. Go with the merit, which is what Pete has been saying. Merit before identity. Equality over equity. And that's it. So that is Gillibrand. And as I said, I don't know, I was telling somebody, she changed a lot. I don't know if we just our regular aging, which is happening to everyone, including me, or if anything is going on. And it's just an honest question. So let me know what you think about this also. And by not asking, you can presume on which side of the aisle Gillibrand belongs, by not even knowing whether she's Republican or Democrat. By her questions, her demeanor, her composure, and her posture, and you know where she belongs. So let me see and hear from you. Do you think that was their way of asking these questions, which are non-questions, if they are right to the tone of advice and consent? By the way, if you are getting any value from this short video, please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. It's important. If the channel has to grow, it has to grow on the hill of both of us. I do my best to come here, and I plead that you smash the subscribe button. So I think there is a little bit portion of that remaining. Let's see. And I have to fast forward to get, I think it's a Republican talking. Now, let me
clear, and one of the areas that we want to do our best is to provide for the equipment and the technical capabilities so that no young man or woman enters into a battle as a fair fight, and that they always have the advantage. Those are the types of questions that I'd like to get into right now, and I want to start by talking about something that sometimes gets a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's critical. Mr. Hegseth, from what I've heard from 24 senior DOD officials in hearings over the last 2 years, including the Secretary of Defense, every service chief, and 8 combatant commanders, is that sharing the portion of the spectrum, and this is in the weeds, I know, but I'm going to ask it to get it on the record, the 3.1 to 3.5 gigahertz band would have extremely serious consequences and very costly consequences on our warfighting capabilities. In fact, the Department of the Navy alone has estimated that relocating their systems to a different part of the spectrum band would cost them $250 billion. That's just for the destroyers that defend our coasts with the radars that they have in them. If confirmed, what will you do to make sure that the Department of Defense can maintain its access to and the use and to be able to maneuver within the electromagnetic spectrum at home and abroad? And would you be willing to literally go to the mat with the interagency to protect warfighter requirements for the use of the spectrum?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. And my job, in part, will be to go to the mat when necessary for things I believe are an absolute requirement for the Department of Defense and the men and women in uniform. There's no doubt about that. In this particular case, as far as spectrum, I look forward, as I've said before, getting a full class, because this issue has come up a number of times in meetings. It's critically important with how our warfighters communicate across all services. So I'm going to get a classified briefing immediately about how it would impact the spectrum if it were to allow other companies or other it to be
Rest
auctioned off.
assured, China
So we have
would
to know.
China would love to have our ability to use that part of the spectrum restricted. They would
And
love that.
Absolutely right. And so I will go in with eyes only toward ensuring we have the capabilities we need and there's no disruption when I take that brief.
Thank you. In your advanced policy questions, you recognize a cooperative approach by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea to undermine U.S. influence around the world. As you point out, aggression by any one actor would be an opportunity for others to engage the U.S. on multiple fronts along the continuum of the conflict. As we discussed in my office, neither of us wants to send our troops into a fair fight. We want to make sure that they have every advantage that the United States can give them, and that requires resources and reforms. Given the growing potential of a multi-theater conflict involving near-peer adversaries, what steps would you take to prepare the Department of Defense to simultaneously execute and sustain operations across multiple regions while maintaining readiness and deterrence globally? And I just have to make note, and I want to make it clear, we have language in this year's fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act calling for a review of the department's operational plans. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and that we will have, if we have a fight with one, the chances are very good that we're going to have two battles or two different battlegrounds at the same time.
Senator, which is why I believe our country's incredibly fortunate to have a new commander-in-chief in Donald Trump, who through the strategic approach he has taken with allies and against foes has prevented wars and is determined to do the same. That's our chief job, is deter and prevent wars. My job, should I be confirmed at the Secretary of Defense, is to ensure we have the right prioritization of assets and strategy, and then the tools in the toolbox necessary, the pointiest possible spear for President Trump to wield if necessary as the last resort. So President Trump at the helm, I think, will go a long way in making sure our enemies know there's a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, you see, just judging honestly and as much unbiased as possible, everyone has a bias. You have assessed two people from both sides. There are more, but it doesn't have to be overclocked. Let me know what you think. Who is actually working for the people? Who is standing out, asking the question the people have not the opportunity to ask? The policy question, not the bedroom question for those who don't want anything out of the bedroom to come out, but now they are dishing it out in the public. And it is so disappointing that when you have a time to drive a question, to carry the public along in what will help the country, because whether you like it or not, except if the Republican don't want to confirm him, whether they like it or not, he's going to be confirmed. Why not be part of control? At least put checks and balance, be part of the process. He's not worse than most people in the former administration, including the person, the man stealing, or the woman stealing. I don't know what they call him, whether it's a woman or what do you call it, non-binary man or non-binary. Don't know how to put that. The non-binary individual who was stealing people's bag at the airport. He was still in government. The people who will have performing sexual act in the hall of the Senate, they were also working for a senator. Those people they are still existing somewhere around. It's not something close to that. This is the person who is going to be in charge in the vacuum between when Trump is going out and when Biden is going out. And people have not thought about it. There is a vacuum in office at that point in time. Who will keep the nation going? It is the officials that are being confirmed now. They are the people who have the opportunity to take decisions within that vacuum, so that no hostile authority can take advantage of the situation. And it's not a time to play joke and ask about whether you had sex 7 years ago and the baby resulted in it or not. And nobody has cared about how have you transformed since that 7 years? As if they were exactly what they were 7 years ago. Anyway, let's not go so furthermore. It's already a long video. I wanted to make it 20 minutes. Now it's almost 40 minutes. But actually, if you got any value from the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. But above all, I want you to smash the like button, even if you don't want to subscribe. But the main thing that I would love you to subscribe, so that we have a chance of having one another again. Until we meet again, enjoy a beautiful moment with the people you love. Stay cool.